Ladies and gentlemen, the NHL preseason has only been going on for a couple of days now, but I'm such a sicko that I want to talk about these preseason games now. So today I want to talk about a few players that have impressed me, surprised me, and guys that could end up surprising by making their NHL teams this fall. Now, the first player I want to talk about today is somebody that has been getting a lot of buzz since the first preseason game from the Islanders, and that is, of course, first overall pick, Matthew Schaefer. For the first time in such a long time, we've finally seen Schaefer in official game action. This was against bigger competition, stronger competition, and he looked pretty good. Of course, the viral clip where he ended up back-checking on Matvei Michkov, using that skating, using that speed, that's really the Matthew Schaefer that I've come to love. That's when Schaefer is at his best, is when he is using his wheels, and my goodness, are they fast. Even though it was probably a penalty there at the end, it was still a very impressive play, and the rest of his game looked pretty good too. Outside of that, he had an assist on a slap shot that created a rebound for a goal. He just looked confident all night though, and just looked excited to get back into game action, which is exactly what I wanted to see. Even though I was pretty skeptical about that at first, the further we get into this process, the more I'm like, well, it's going to happen anyways. Let's see what he's made of. Personally, I was always kind of more on the side of sending him back to the OHL or even having him in the NCAA this next season just to have him get some more games, build that confidence up, and be among the best players in the league once again, but actually be able to play more games and be able to be a little bit more comfortable in the game he's playing. But I feel like he's transitioned pretty well from not playing any games for months now. It seems like he's prepared himself pretty well physically, even though he was battling that injury, and he looks perfectly fine. I'm still concerned about Schaefer and, let's say, 40 games into the NHL season, how he's going to keep performing, because I think there might be a wall there that he ends up hitting, even if he is prepared physically. Not playing in those games, not being in game shape completely, I think could eventually come back to bite him a bit. But I think at this point, he's going to have a fine rookie season, play a decent amount of NHL games. I just don't want the Islanders to run him into a wall and really limit his upside long term, because the potential here, pretty clearly, is spectacular. On to another younger defenseman here who's looking to break out this year. We go into Brandt Clarke of the LA Kings, who is something that I've always rooted for, but it seems like this year is going to finally be the season that he officially breaks out. He's always been somebody that, ice time-wise, has kind of been deployed weirdly by LA. Did get a pretty good amount of points this last year, getting 33 points in 78 games, his first full season in the NHL. But now, with Jordan Spence gone, it seems like Clarke has really been able to maximize his position here. And he had a beautiful assist in his last preseason game, looked absolutely dominant out there, using so much flash in the best of ways. And that's exactly what I want to see out of him, because when Clarke is really confident, there's few defensemen that can play quite like him. He's exactly what I think the LA Kings team needs more of, especially on defense. More energy, more speed, and more heads-up play. Clarke, I think, when he does have the confidence behind him, when he actually feels like the team wants to have him out there, I think he can do fantastic things, and I'm hoping this is the year that that actually is the case for the Kings, because my goodness, man, the high-end plays here are among the best in the league. So I'm just saying, buy your Brandt Clarke stocks now, because by April, I'm sure they're going to be looking pretty good. Now, before we go on to the next player, if you guys are enjoying the content so far, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already for more hockey videos like this, and hit that like button if you haven't already too. It helps the channel out a ton, and if you guys want to support the channel even more, you can become a member by hitting the join button, by the subscribe button, or hitting the link in the description down below. For a couple bucks a month, you get exclusive videos every single week, plus exclusive polls, exclusive roles in the Discord, and exclusive emoji to use in the chat and in live streams. And a big thank you to all the members that'll be here on the screen. I appreciate you guys a ton, and let's get right back into it. In terms of the lefty options, I'm a little bit more comfortable, I guess, with Brian Dumoulin as the lefty for Clarke than a Joel Edmondson, because Edmondson is just thinking, oh my gosh, Edmondson CC as a pair. That's going to be, that's a must-watch hockey. I'm going to be honest, even more than Clarke, I got to see that. But of course, Mikey Anderson is likely to be on the top pair every single night because he is the LA Kings' best defensive defenseman. So I think Dumoulin is a nice middle ground there. He's not at the prime of his career anymore, but he can still do a decent job defensively and not be a complete black hole in terms of the puck movement, which will help Brandt Clarke get up the ice a little bit easier. Just Edmondson Clarke, let's not do that again. Now, one player that did impress and surprise me a bit with how good they looked in the last preseason game, and that is Jack Quinn of the Buffalo Sabres. That game in general was a pretty good one for the Sabres against Columbus, but I think one of the biggest success stories and one of the most important things was Jack Quinn actually looked pretty good. This has never been a player that I've been super high on, especially as an 8th overall pick, but he's also battled a ton. The ACL injury and how he was able to rehab from that and not really very well last year. He got 39 points in 74 games, but in terms of the actual impact, in terms of the actual speed and offensive play, there were just glaring issues with his game that I think needed to be corrected. But in the game he played versus Columbus, which I get it is one preseason game, I thought he looked incredibly fast, looked way more detailed, even if there is still some things to iron out. I think that's the best version of Jack Quinn that I've seen in the NHL at least. And of course, again, preseason, take it with a grain of salt, but I think for the Sabres especially, they need a fantastic season out of Jack Quinn to really solidify that middle six on the wing. There's some issues, I think, with the consistency there, but I think a big year out of Jack Quinn, I think, could fix a lot of the issues there, even though I think offense isn't the issue with Buffalo. That's not the thing they really need. Having a Jack Quinn who's maybe a little more consistent would certainly help them and help that already pretty good offense. I just kind of feel bad for the guy, though, with his situation in Buffalo not being the greatest and the injuries he's also faced. It's definitely not the greatest mental health situation to be in. I could absolutely see that. So I just think for Quinn's sake, to have a good, solid year under him would do him a lot of good. One player I want to give a big shout out to who really impressed well was Finnie, and this is somebody that I think could be a pretty underrated potential option to make the NHL this year, which is a huge accomplishment for a 20-year-old 7th rounder. Now, Finnie is somebody that I've kept tabs on for a while because I've always enjoyed his game. He's always been super detailed and defensive oriented, but the scoring upside has always kind of been a bit of a question mark. In his draft year, he only got 35 points in 64 games for Kamloops. Looks pretty good in the playoffs, which I think did end up getting him a draft pick, but he's progressed since then quite well. 59 points in 62 games the year after, which isn't exceptional by any means, but playing the WHL in 2025 again and absolutely torched for Kamloops, being the captain there, 85 points and 37 goals in 55 games. It was a huge step for him. That was always kind of my biggest concern around Finnie, was even though the motor was good, the details were solid, and the defensive foundation was rock solid there. The scoring touch and the actual offensive skill was kind of a bit of a question mark for me, at least game to game. But I think what we've seen out of Finnie so far in everything with Detroit this last month, he has really been able to show up to the scene here, and I think make a good argument to be an NHLer this next year. Detroit has some okay depth in the forward group, but Finnie I think could bring some real energy and defensive upside that I think could boost that team quite a bit. I mean, if we're just going off of the preseason games and everything, I would put Finnie on the team if I was Detroit. Obviously, more games to come, more decisions to make, but he's looked real good so far. But I love to see success stories like this, especially a 7th rounder who was scoring like he was in his draft year. Not really many people would have expected him to even be at this stage in a couple of seasons, let alone at 20 years old. So I think what Finnie has shown has been really important for Detroit, especially another big success story when it comes to their drafting so far. But of course, still time for him to prove himself, and I think there is still a couple more games to go for him. He apparently will be on the top line with Dylan Larkin too, so they're kind of seeing him maybe as more of a complimentary role and maybe a higher spot in the lineup, and boy howdy would that be fun to see, because Finnie is a ton of fun and I think is starting to get his flowers, which is great to see. There's a couple others too. I think Nate Danielson has looked pretty good so far for Detroit in both the rookie showcase and in the preseason so far, so maybe he's somebody that could also jump his way into the roster, though I think Finnie and his, I think, more complementary role, more diversity in his game, has a better shot at making it. Onto a player that has really impressed so far, and that is Harrison Bruneke of the Pittsburgh Penguins, a massive, incredibly important prospect in this Pens pool. But I thought he looked really good alongside Owen Pickering in that game that he played, and I thought it was a huge step for him personally, because he's somebody that I think has kind of been interesting in terms of the tools compared to the production, because the tools have always been there. The skating speed and how he's able to process opposition coming against him defensively. He's just a really good foundational defenseman, but I wanted to see more aggression out of him. I wanted to see more quickness in his decision-making, and I think since his draft year, we have been able to see that. I think he took a pretty big step this last year for Kamloops, playing 41 games, getting 30 points, and playing some AHL games too, which ain't too bad. But I was kind of expecting Bruneke to be either in the WHL or the AHL this next year, but potentially back in the WHL for his 19-year-old season. But I think there might be a chance that he plays NHL games this next year. Now, I think Bruneke would be much more likely to be a 9-game tryout or something and then be sent back to the WHL, but I think that would still be a pretty big accomplishment. And I think for Pittsburgh, they're kind of weighing their defense and some of the icky players on that defense, and I think Bruneke has been one of the best of them them so far, at least in terms of how he's played. I think one of the bigger things for Braeden Cootes is just finding that confidence, and I think that has really propelled his game in a massive way. It seems like he really is been able to find himself and exactly what works and what doesn't, and he's been able to really maximize his strengths. And especially for a Penguins team right now that is kind of entering that rebuilding stage, to have somebody like him as a 44th overall pick already impressing like he is massive for the team. We already know that his pair in Owen Pickering, he's going to be playing a lot of NHL games this next year, but if Braeden Cootes could show up, play some pretty good games, and maybe even go past the tryouts, that would be a pretty massive win for this Penguins team, and man, I think they're going to need them this next year. Also, a mini shout out to Tristan Brose, who I think has looked really good in the preseason game too, looked really good in the prospect tournament, and just seems to rise to the occasion. He wasn't a unbelievable NCAA player or anything, but he just feels like when the pressure is ramped up, when the going gets tough, he just gets better, and that's another big win for the Pens. Going on to somebody that I'm not really surprised is playing as well as he has been, but I just want to talk about him because he continues to be so much fun, and that is Justin Carbonneau. I am sorry, but I like Carbonneau a ton, man. Even though he was always one I was a bit more skeptical on when it came to how he played, this guy is just so skilled and so energetic in his game that it almost ceases to matter. He's someone that went 19th overall by St. Louis in 2025 and is another one that I would not be shocked if they got a 9-game tryout. Is one like Braeden Cootes that I think does get sent back to junior eventually, but St. Louis kind of has this youth wave coming on alongside Snodgrass, of course. I think Carbonneau could be a sneaky one, though, to make the roster. I don't really know where he fits in terms of the lineup right now, but I think he's just been too good to deny. He was great against that in that game versus Dallas, really imposing as well, and again, using that individual skill in advantageous ways, not just using it to use it. He was really smart in how he was using it, which I think is one of the best parts of Carbonneau's game, dating back to his start in the QMJHL to now. He's always used that skill in such important and really interesting ways that not many players do. Even though I was still a bit worried with how he was using his physical play, and the defensive game I don't think is ever going to be fantastic or anything. He just knows what he's good at. And I think for St. Louis, they're kind of in a position to give some spots to some youth, especially to a guy like Carbonneau, who I think could fit a pretty interesting role if he were to play in the middle six. Definitely would be a boost for that power play. I know that for sure. I think for St. Louis, that is exactly the position they want to put him in. So having him maybe as a sheltered power play third liner for a few games to start the year, why not? I'd love to see it. Continuing on with the 2025 draftees that I'm impressed, I want to go on to one of my boys from this last draft in Braeden Cootes of the Vancouver Canucks. Somebody that, I'm going to be honest too, might be another one from the 2025 draft that ends up getting a good chunk of games to start out the year. And that surprised me because I really didn't think there were going to be that many guys to play in the NHL in this year or even get games. I thought it would have been Misa, Schaefer, and then outside of that, who really knows? But Braeden Cootes, man, this guy is just willing his way to NHL games. Which, if you've caught my coverage of this guy, shouldn't really be much of a surprise. I mean, it is a bit of a surprise for me that it actually is happening, but his play on the ice isn't surprising whatsoever. The high energy, high motor, among the best in the draft, is just showcasing itself well. But I think what Cootes has been able to show outside of that energy and the details of the defensive game, he's been able to show a little bit more skill, and that's what I wanted to see, because I think Cootes has always kind of had it under the radar, but hasn't quite used it as much as I really want. Because his motor is so good, he really has to deke people out to get in front of the net or to get his high quality chances, but now he's using everything in his toolkit, playing against major competition, and I am adoring it. And we had an article recently from Thomas Drance of The Athletic going through Braeden Cootes' chances of getting a look in the NHL, saying that Cootes has been a standout since training camp opened. Vancouver's 2025 first rounder is still developing physically and is undersized for the moment, but he has a true NHL caliber wheels and an impressive deceptive release on a shot. Though he's not typically been known for his east-west creativity, he's demonstrated some real playmaking aptitude and flashes in training camp drills, at the club's scrimmage last weekend, and his NHL preseason debut on Sunday. Behind the scenes, Cootes' maturity and competitiveness have caught the attention of Canucks coaches and hockey operations leadership alike. It's critical to note that he stood out for reasons beyond what we've seen from his on-ice performance. He carries himself like a player who might be ready, which, again, is a reason why he was captain for Seattle already in his draft year. That's also tracks pretty well. And the big note here, though, is, and importantly, Cootes is a right-handed center, something this Canucks roster sorely lacks otherwise. It's a trait that the club places a significant premium on, despite or perhaps because of the glaring organizational deficit of pivots that shoot right-handed. All of these factors have aligned to present Cootes with a tremendous opportunity over the balance of the preseason. He's got a long way to go to make this team out of training camp and get even a 9-game look playing NHL games this season, but he's made a big impression on the organization and is building a credible case in the early going. going. So even though it's not confirmed whatsoever, I do think Cootes gets a 9-game tryout and does get a good opportunity to showcase himself and kind of give some diversity for that bottom 6, at least to start things out. I do think he'll eventually be sent back because I don't think he's going to be quite at that level that he's going to be moving the needle too much at the NHL level. But hey, to even make it, to be in this position, I think is a great success story. Even though you want to see that out of your first round pick, I think in Cootes' case, what he's been delivering, what he's been able to showcase on and off the ice is extremely important. So I, for one, am a really happy camper here, seeing Cootes doing what he's doing, and hopefully for the Canucks being a major factor in 2027. Or I mean, 2026, 27. You get what I mean. Anyways, those are some of the players that I want to talk about here that have impressed me so far in preseason action, and I get that this is a very, very early video to make since not even every team has played preseason games so far, but I want to talk about hockey, man. I love this so much, and I've been dying for hockey, so it's been a great time to be able to watch these players, to see the highlights, see what's happened so far, and to be able to talk about it with you guys and actually get this off my chest. It's finally happening, y'all. And the NHL season is right around the corner, and I, for one, cannot wait. But if you can't wait either, make sure that like button, hit that subscribe button, and the notification bell if you haven't. And of course, share the video with all you Hawk fans you guys know online, and comment down below your thoughts on which players have impressed you, maybe disappointed you as well. Let me know your thoughts down below on that. And click on this card if you haven't already for more hockey rankings content right in one playlist. Plus, if you guys want to support the channel, become a member, you can hit the join button or hit the link in the description down below as well. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic hockey day. And goodbye.